Where do I start? Where do I begin? How do I stop?
What I'd like to do today is a little bit different to the previous calls I've done, which is where I've been sharing an experience. I'd like to make today's call a little bit more interactive. So I'll be opening up in a moment with a question for you that I'd like you to ponder. But also, as we go through, I talked about this idea of 4 key questions of leadership. And if you're open to it, I'd love to work with you on these 4 questions. So I might pick out 1 or 2 people who might want to work through these 4 questions. I will ask the whole group, and then I might work with 1 or 2 of you in what those questions really mean for you. And if you haven't used Uber Conference before, one way of attracting my attention, especially if you're on mute, is if you're on a computer, on the right-hand side, there's a little tab with a speech balloon in it. If you click on that, you can type a message. So I'll keep in touch with you via those messages, and you can let me know if you want to say something, or you have a question or a thought you'd like to share. So we'll do that through there. And otherwise, I'll also spend some time where I'll take everybody off mute, and people can shout out. The only challenge with that is when we get 15, 20 people on the call, that if I make everybody off mute, then it can get a little bit noisy. So most of the time I'll be on mute when I'm speaking, and the other times I'll be, when I open for questions, I'll take everybody off mute. So I hope that's clear. I'm going to start now. I'm just going to pop everybody on mute for the moment and say welcome. Thank you so much for joining. 1 or 2 names I know, perhaps people we haven't spoken in the past. 1 or 2 connections we haven't connected for a while. So welcome to the Coaching Unlimited live call. Really excited to see you here. And it's a topic which certainly over the last couple of weeks has really come up powerfully for me in very many different guises. And that's the topic of leadership. And I think the first question that really comes up when I think about leadership is, what is leadership? What is leadership to you? And in fact, I'm going to pick out, I'm literally just going to pick out 1 or 2 people and ask what leadership is for you. So I'm going to start. Hopefully Pratyush can speak. Hi Pratyush, can you speak?
Yes, can you hear me, David?
I can hear you super clear. Everybody can hear you. So I'm curious, Pratyush, what does leadership mean to you?
To me, the leadership mean is an ability to lead, ability to provide a direction, ability to take to a places where people have not been before.
I love that. Beautiful definition. So the ability to take people where they might not have been before, to provide direction. Thank you for that. Let me pick 1 or 2 others. I'm going to pick on Chris, because I don't think we've spoken before. Hi, Chris.
Hi, David. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very clearly. Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me, what does leadership mean to you?
I think leadership for me means being prepared to walk my talk, lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Very
think,
nice.
yeah.
Thank you. So it's about being consistent, about being congruent. And I think, the Gandhi talks about when what you think and what you feel and what you say and what you do are all in alignment. That he calls it happiness. And I think that, to me, is a form of leadership. Let me pick Sue. Let's say hello to Sue. Hi, Sue.
Hi, David.
Hello. What does leadership mean to you?
It means, for me, it means walking the walk and talking the talk. Doing it, being and doing what I espouse, and inspiring other people to follow, and maybe be leaders as well.
Yeah. And in fact, that leads me to another question. What is leadership for? What do you think leadership is for?
Now, at this moment in time, David, I'm not sure of my answer for that.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I don't honestly have an answer at this
Okay.
moment.
Thank you. Thank you for that honesty. Thank you. So I want to share some thoughts about what I perceive as being leadership. I think if you observe styles of leadership, there are some different styles. I don't know if everybody here has been in a corporate job or worked in a business, but one style of leadership is having a boss. We talk about them as a boss. We don't talk about them as a leader. I worked in an organization, and amazingly, this person was a very, very senior person, and there was a small team of us worked with her, and the dynamic wasn't going very well. And so they hired in some coaches, and they did some analysis, and HR were involved, and there was lots of 360-degree analysis, and lots of soul searching, and get-togethers, and being vulnerable. And this went on for about 6 months. And then we had a meeting at the end of it, where all the feedback had been gathered, and it was all sitting on the table. And she came in the room and sat down. And she said, I've reviewed what we've done in the last 6 months. And I think the answer is very simple. She said, you think I'm a bastard, get over it. Now, to me, I just found that remarkable. I left that organization very shortly afterwards. But to me, that's what I would call the most basic form of leadership, which is I've got a title which makes me more superior than you, so you will do what I say. It's the classic boss, the kind of shouty, often bad-tempered, caricature that we see of leadership. But it's what I call title leadership. People have a title, and so you will do what they say. Now, in some contexts, like the army, that's a very important thing. If someone has a title of lieutenant or captain or corporal or general, then you're entrained through the whole structure of the army to do what that person says. And I remember being in a workshop very many years ago when I was in consultancy, and there was a workshop where people were brainstorming. And it was very odd because there was a group of people, and there'd be a general discussion, there'd be a discussion amongst the group, and things would come up, and they would be discussed. And then what happened was there was one person, and every time that person spoke, everybody else suddenly agreed with him. It's because he was a general, and they were all below him. And they'd been so entrained in this idea of recognizing title that whenever he spoke, they all agreed. So title leadership, it's often caricatured or characterized as being the less resourceful form of leadership, the do as I say. And in many contexts, that's not a good thing. However, in some contexts, it can be a very powerful form of leadership. So in very stressful situations, in situations that require a lot of order, armed forces, the military, it's very important that you know who the leader is. And the title is one way of achieving that. Now, another form of leadership is kind of barter, where, and depending, on your perspective, it's a style of leadership where the leader negotiates with you to get you to do something. So it might be a form of leadership where if you do well, if you achieve these objectives, I'll give you a pay rise. I'll help you with your promotion. And it's very much a negotiation style of leadership, maybe consultative, maybe a little bit coach style of leadership. And it's a softer form of leadership. And then I think there's another kind of leadership, which to me, I think is the epitome of leadership. It's the ultimate of in leadership, is what I call a servant leader. And what I love is that, Pratish, Chris, and Sue all alluded to aspects of this idea of the servant leader. The servant leader leads by example. They be the change they want to see in the world, which is, the famous Gandhi quote. They go first. Leaders go first. And Pratyush talked about leaders create a direction and they lead people where they might not have been before, and they do it by going first. And when I think about what leadership is for, Pratyush, I think, said it brilliantly. He said it's about creating direction. And why is it relevant as a coach? And this is what I believe. I think in the world of being connected with Google and online and all sorts of resources available to us, I think there's a huge amount of knowledge out there, which is easily accessible. Everybody's creating social proof and references and testimonials. I mean, look at LinkedIn. That's how it works. But there's something beyond that. I think what individuals crave more than that, more than some more knowledge, what they crave is leadership. And I think that in coaching, that's what a client is oftentimes looking for. And it's not for someone to tell them what to do. It's deeper than that. It's not knowledge. It's not more information. It's, can I trust you? Deep down inside, can I bare my soul to you? And can I truly trust you? It's, what do you stand for? Where are you going? Is that somewhere where I want to go to? Where are you going to take me? Again, can I trust you? And the trust goes further. It's, do I trust you enough to allow you to lead me? Can you take me to where I want to go? And ultimately, it's, can I be truly vulnerable with you and expose all of my rawness? And to me, that's what leadership is in the coaching context. I think it's a very powerful dimension of coaching, that whilst we're not there to tell, we're not there to mentor, it's not consultancy. Coaching is simply holding space. And yet in holding space, in perhaps being silent for an hour and simply listening and creating space, you're being a powerful leader. Because you're creating that space that allows vulnerability, that allows profound trust and connection, that allows for rawness. And I'm going to make a big contrast here between learning and leadership. If I want to learn something, I'll get a mentor or a consultant. If I want leadership, I won't go there. I'm looking for a coach. Anybody can go to Google and get learning from there. Leadership is much deeper than that. And so that's why I loved what Chris and Sue and Pratyush said. It's about being aligned. It's about walking your talk. It's about standing for something in the world and not being afraid of expressing it. And what I want to do for much of this call now is share with you 4 questions that were based on research of about 30,000 leaders. And it was published in the Harvard Business Review. And it was analysis that talked about, what does leadership look like? How can we tell when people are being leaders? And are there any common characteristics of leadership? So what they discovered was that in corporate world, leadership often showed up when people were under stress. It was when things got difficult, that was when the leadership qualities were tested. And leaders who were successful had a similar set of qualities. And so leaders that were seen as being resourceful, that were seen as being strong leaders, that when the pressure was on, they tended to focus on, what results do I want to create? It's, what do I want to get? Where am I going? How do I want to get there? They also stopped solving the problem. They stopped focusing on problem solving, and they started to focus on purpose finding. Why do we want to solve this situation? We are in a difficult situation. There's lots of problems in that situation, but leadership was around finding the purpose. For those of you who are familiar, remember Simon Sinek. He talks about the golden circle. If you're not familiar, then go to Google and search for Simon Sinek Golden Circle. It's a 5-minute video. But he talks about powerful leadership is about being completely clear on why you're doing what you're doing. Not what you're doing or how you're doing it, it's why you're doing it. And that's what creates alignment in people. So that was another dimension of powerful leadership. Another dimension is it's when you move from being externally directed to internally directed. And often one of the most consistent themes I have in coaching, and no matter who I'm coaching or what style of coaching I'm doing, it's the work of taking away judgment. I'm not sure I want to do this because what will people think of me? I was just on a coaching call before this one, and I was talking to someone about the free coffee game. And I was asking her about how she would feel about going to a Starbucks and asking for a free coffee. And she said, I'd feel embarrassed. I'd feel embarrassed because I'd be judged for asking a silly question. That's externally directed. That's taking input from outside and shaping how you will react. Powerful leaders, when they come under pressure, they become internally directed. They set their own compass, and they set the direction based on their own compass. There's another dimension of leadership that shows up, which is about the focus. Is the focus on me or is the focus on others? Leaders that were resourceful, that were seen as being powerful, were not seen as being self-focused. They were seen as being focused on others. It's why do you want to get there? How are we going to get there? Not how am I going to get there? It's how are we going to survive? Not how am I going to survive? And I think the final piece is that great leaders have a great sensory acuity. They're very aware of what's going on around them. And they're very open to outside signals. And so this is contrasting with not being externally directed, but at the same time being extremely open to what's going on around. And I think the two actually go hand in hand. Because I think when we're externally directed, and I know from my own experience, when I'm feeling defensive or fearful, when information comes in, I'm immediately processing it, which is, how does that impact me? What's going to happen? How's that going to hurt me? How's that going to be an issue for me? But actually, when I let go of that external direction and I start working on my compass, I'm actually becoming more open to what's happening around me. And I take information in, and I'm not judging that information for myself. I'm judging it in terms of that information is useful or not useful at this time. That information is resourceful or not resourceful at this time. And so the focus is a very powerful shift. And so what they concluded was that with these different dimensions, that the fundamental state of leadership is what they described as an externally open state, that you're always open to input. Now, of course, many of you on this call are coaches, and I don't need to tell you this. Of course, being in that externally open state and sitting in a place that doesn't judge is a very powerful place to be as a coach. And I think if you're in that very powerful place as a coach, it allows you to be an even more powerful leader. So the question is, so what? How do we take that and make it into something that's incredibly practical and powerful for you today? So what I want to do now is I want to take you through 4 questions. And these 4 questions were distilled from all this research about leadership and about how the leadership characteristics show up. And these 4 questions are really going to calibrate where you are on your leadership journey. So what I want you to do is, ideally, if you've got a pen and a paper, you can do this, or you can do it on your computer. It's just very simple. I'm going to ask you each of these 4 questions. And then what I'd like you to do is to calibrate yourself with brutal honesty and say, where am I? Am I a 0 or am I a 10? Now, a 10 is I am absolutely owning and being that leadership characteristic. A 0 is I am absolutely the opposite of that. I am not doing that at all. And I suspect that most of you will be somewhere in between. So what I'd like to do is go through the 4 questions. We'll take our time over them. I'd like you to write them down. And then if you're open to it, I would love to work with one or two of you on where you are in calibrating your leadership journey. So just before I do all of that, I just want to very quickly open the call up and ask if anybody's got any questions or anything that they'd like to share in this. I'll take that resounding silence as you're either unmute yourself or you have no questions, which is fantastic.
David, I have.
Oh, who was that? Was that Jane?
Me.
Was that Jane? Hello, Jane. I think Jane and I are muting each other. Hello, Jane. Was that you, Jane?
Yes. Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
I can now hear you. Yes, I can hear you now.
Thank you. When you were talking through those characteristics that came from the business review, again, the first one, I didn't quite, I don't know that I was quite tuned in properly, and so I haven't got that in my head.
So it's what results do I want to create?
Results, yes. What results do I want to
create? The first
create?
two go hand in hand. It's what results do I want to create, and how do I go from problem solving to purpose finding? So it's what's the result and why do I want to get there? That kind of goes, I think to me, goes very much hand in hand. So it's being outcome focused at a macro level. And a true leader would take that to the highest level possible. And it's the reason why do we want to get over there.
Okay, but the why, the purpose, was definitely a second separate thing that you talked about.
Yes, that's right. So it's what results do I want to create, and then how do I shift from being problem solving to purpose finding? You see, a manager, and it's the old cliche, isn't it? It's doing things right versus doing the right thing. When someone who's a manager rather than a leader, when they're under pressure, what they will do is they will reapply that what they know, which is operational management, which is I'll fix the problem. But it may not actually get you any further forward. Whereas the leader, it's not about doing things right, it's about doing the right thing. And the right thing is, why do I want to be there? Why do I want to solve this situation? What's at the end of the rainbow, if you like? What's the purpose?
Okay. That's lovely. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you. I love the comment that Anne says. Anne says, to be a leader, you first need to be able to lead yourself, and thank you for the reminder. That absolutely. Leadership starts within. And it's only then, and I think that goes with what Chris and Sue were saying about, walking your talk, being aligned with what you say and what you do and how you act is all in alignment. So absolutely, I agree with you, Anne. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. So what I want to share is the 4 questions. So have you a bit of paper in front of you? You never know, I might call on you. And 0 to 10. So the first question is, am I results centered? Let me add a little caveat to that, a little explanation. It might be easier to say the opposite of that is being comfort-centered. So result-centered is, I will go the extra mile. I will do the extra thing. I will stay up the extra hour. I will ask the most difficult question. I will call the person I fear most. That's action-centered. Comfort-centered is, I'll just wait another day. I'll just do this instead. I'll just go check Facebook. I'll just write this blog. Comfort-centered is doing things that are well within your comfort zone because they avoid taking powerful action. Result-centered is knowing that you have results to create. It's establishing powerful results, and then it's doing them. It's taking action to get there. So am I result-centered? 0 is totally comfort-centered. no focus on results at all. 10 is you are completely driven by the results you create and drive and strive to get. That's the first one. The second question is, am I internally directed? So there's a kind of a simple litmus test here, which is when you think about other people judging you for what you do, when you think about other people laughing at you, questioning you, saying things about you, how do you react? Do you kind of go, bring it on, I'm good with that? Or does it make you go a little bit smaller inside and your stomach gets some butterflies and your throat gets a bit tighter? So I think that one way of looking at internally directed is when I see leaders like this, they prefer to stand out rather than to fit in. They want to be heard. They want their message, their purpose to be shared in the world. That's what's important to them, over and above everything else. I think I said recently, I came up with an observation that their fear of being judged is less than their fear of not being heard. So I think internally directed, you know your own compass, you don't hide, and you definitely don't hide when people challenge you. So internally directed, 10 is you completely driven by your own compass. 0 is you're completely driven by external input, and there's probably a number somewhere in between where you might sit. So that's the second question. The third question is, am I other-focused? Now, I talked at the beginning about title leadership and barter leadership and servant leadership. Now, my experience as a servant leader, and to me, if I was to think about a servant leader, I'd probably think of Gandhi. I'd think of Mother Teresa, maybe Martin Luther King, that their orientation is about the service of others. They have a clear purpose. They found their purpose. They have a clear purpose, and their focus is on how do I get we to that place. I think typically a title leader and often a barter leader is how do I get to that place? How do I defend my position and get to that place? I like to think of the answer to this question is someone who is other focused is also deeply service orientated. And that's my words. Your words might be different. I'm just giving my projection into that. So this question is, am I other focused? A 10 would be, I am highly driven in the service and focus on getting others there. A 0 is, it's all about me. The final question is, am I externally open? So, to me, being externally open is you have a high sensory acuity. What I've tended to notice, and this is again my filter, my projection, I think people with people who are strongly self-centered, people who are self-focused, tend to have a low sensory acuity. I find that people who are other-focused, who are service-oriented, can often have a high sensory acuity. So I'm not saying it's hard and fast, I'm just saying that's what I've noticed. So to me, externally open is you're open to the signals coming in. You're not letting too many filters build up and holding them out. You notice what's going on around you. You notice how people are feeling. You notice how results are shifting. You notice that you need more information on this, less information on that. You can start to judge based on the environment around you. So this question is, am I externally open? And if a 10 is you have a powerful sensory acuity, you have a powerful intuition, you know what's going on around you. A 0 is you just don't care. You just don't care. It's not about what's going on around. So they're the 4 questions. Now, the reason why I bring these 4 questions is I think there's 2 parts to this. I think that, like we're doing on this call today, we can use them to calibrate where you are on your leadership journey. But I also think that when there is pressure, when you are feeling challenged as a leader, get these questions out and ask yourself these questions. Am I being result-centered? Am I being internally directed? Am I being other-focused? Am I being externally open? Because it can help recalibrate you and bring you back on track to remind you where you might need to give more energy and focus to up your quality of leadership in that moment. So I think there's a dual purpose with these. Let's use them today as a calibration and keep them somewhere handy, memorize them. And so when you do feel pressured, you can bring them out and say, actually, it's time to revisit these. Let's check in where I am today. So hopefully, as I've been talking, you've been able to capture where you are in that journey. So I just want to, well, actually, if you're on a computer, I think Sue already put a hand up to say she'd be open to reviewing the calibration. So I'm going to start with Sue. So if you would be happy for me to go through the calibration with you, Anne said yes too. So I'm going to start with Sue. So hello again, Sue.
Hello, David.
So let's go through the questions. Let's just quickly jump through the questions and understand where you are on the calibration. So when it says, am I result-centered, where are you between a 0 and 10?
Okay, I've said 5, but it does ebb and flow. So
Yeah.
when I'm feeling really confident, my personal life is in a good way, it would be higher. At the moment, I've got some sort of things I'm struggling with, so I've kind of said it's 5 because I am being result centered, but I'm also totally aware that I'm kind of going back into my comfort zone because I'm in a bit of a wobbly place for myself. So I've given myself 5.
So could I just flip that on its head? And I'm not sure if anybody else heard that. A lot of you on this call are coaches. This is what I heard you say. You heard that your number can be higher than 5. You're currently 5 because you've got some things going on. There's a bit of a wobble going on in your self-confidence.
Yeah.
And so what comes up for me is, well, what if you were more result-centered now? What would change for you?
Lots would change. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? So anyway, it's something to play with. We may not have time to go through it all now, but it's a powerful coaching question because I love your awareness and I thank you for your honesty in sharing where you are, and you can almost turn it around, which is, yeah, I'm a bit like a 5 at the moment. Well, and then ask the question, well, what if I was more result-centered? Then maybe that 5 would become an 8, and maybe that wobbly stuff would become much more certain for you. So let's take the second one. Am I internally directed?
So I've given myself 8 for this. Because I believe that to be true. Again, I think there's a bit of flexibility. I am slightly wobbly, so I think maybe normally I might be like a 9 or a 10 because I grew up with the kind of message of be yourself, and I had this fantastic postcard which said why blend in when you can stand out, or something like that. And this gorgeous, unusual bird or something on this card. And I used to love it and look at it and think, yeah, actually, I want to stand out. I want to be myself. I don't want to blend in. And the thought of blending in filled me with a lot of dread and fear. So, so I kind of do tend to just do what I want to do and what I believe in doing. And all my friends know that about me, and they expect me to behave like that. So I've got the sort of backup behind me in the support.
Yeah. So that, and I don't know if anybody noticed that, but clearly Sue feels much more comfortable in being internally directed. And for those of you who know Sue well, Sue, you're absolutely someone who is internally directed. That's what I see in you. You do what you want to do. You do what you love, and you do it your way. And I think that I sense that powerfully.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel much happier talking about that question. And my score in the first question.
So let me take another one. Am I other focused? Where are you in that?
Okay, well I've currently given myself a 6, at the minute.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's some flexibility. I was a health trainer, and I think when I was in that job, I was much more like a 9 or a 10, and it was quite weird. I kind of wanted to speak on behalf of the team, and I kind of would in all these team meetings. Nobody actually ever asked me to do this, but I kind of sensed the mood, and I would talk on behalf of the group, and I think I was being very other focused
Mm-hmm.
in that situation. At the moment, yeah, I've given myself a 6, but I think when I'm passionate and I'm in something that I'm very powerfully supporting or believing, then it would go up. But I'm doing it as a time, like particularly this day
Yeah.
today, on this afternoon, I'm saying 6. But say I was leading some campaign or talking about earthships, or fuel poverty or something connected with that, it would go up to probably a 9 or a 10.
So you find you know that you have a route to get there very quickly, which is powerful.
Yeah,
And you
I'm just
recognise
more.
that.
Yeah, I've got no group to support. For some reason, this question to me, it seems to be about a group.
Mm.
So I haven't got a group that I'm working with at the minute. But if I did, I'd be totally there for them. So like I'm going to start teaching again in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and in my lessons I will be a 10 because I'm
Yeah.
thinking about all my students and their needs, and I'm totally there for them. When the lesson finishes, like half an hour later, I'll be less other focused.
Thank you. So the final one is: am I externally open?
Yeah, so I've given myself an 8 for this, which
Yeah.
I kind of think's about right. So I think that I'm definitely noticing body language and speech and sort of eye contact and postures and on those levels, yeah, I'm giving myself an 8. But if you're talking about trends in the marketplace and maybe things like that, then I would give myself a lower score because well, if I'm totally honest, David, I'm less interested in
Well,
market
absolutely,
trends.
because it's not important to you as a leader. So it's
No.
what's contextual to you.
Yeah,
So if I was to summarize you, Sue, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to give a quick summary of that.
yeah,
But what I hear are 4 questions. There are 2 where I think you're very strong, which is internal direction and externally open, and there are 2 which are not as strong for you. And it's really about the relative score, isn't it? Because I sense that if you were more result centered and you were in a context where you were other focused, then all of your scores would be high, and your core leadership qualities would be showing up really strongly. And that's what I sense.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I those two other ones would be higher if I currently was working with a group or a load of people. Yes, they would go up.
Fantastic. So thank you for sharing that, and again, use them as self-coaching questions. My results centered. I'm a 5 at the moment. Actually, let me turn that around. What if I was result centered? What would happen then? And then what becomes possible for you? So use it as a self-coaching question as well as a calibration. So thank you for that, Sue.
Yeah, thank you, David, for that opportunity. I've really appreciated it and valued it.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, David.
Let's quickly run through these and see where they are for you. Am I result centered?
Okay, I've got myself down as a 5 for that, David.
Yeah.
And
Tell me more about that. Tell me what makes you a 5.
I think, like Sue mentioned, I fluctuate between the upper end of the scale and also returning into my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I think what was interesting to come out of that for myself was what I'm working at is actually becoming more results orientated, but not but trying to link that to actually a state of comfort. So, for example, something that would fall into that category for myself would be making a call to an organization that I want to work for example. And that's, I think in the past I've linked that to sort of a fear of being judged, but actually I'm trying to work with that and actually link it to, well, if I get the work, then obviously that would lead to a more comfortable, certainly financial state, for example.
So what I heard you speak to there was the answer to question number 2. So where are you scored on am I internally directed?
So I've given myself a 7 for that.
Okay.
I think that's, again, it fluctuates, but I think over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, certainly it's moved up. So I'm more internally directed and referenced than externally referenced.
And but going back to you talked about making calls, being results centered.
Yeah.
If you were even more internally directed, would it be easier to make those calls? Would it be easier to set up those outcomes and results?
I think it probably would. Maybe I have a belief, maybe it's a limiting belief about if I become too internally directed, do I lose then the externally, or the ability to be externally open, or have an external reference check?
Okay.
So I don't know if that is something that's, it's a belief that's holding me back. Maybe I could become more internally directed, without kind of losing that external check, which is all important, of course.
Yeah. So, take the third one. Am I other focused?
Yeah, I've got a 7 down currently for that. And again, like Sue mentioned, I think it does fluctuate. Obviously, when I'm in a coaching call, that's, I would like to think, certainly a 9 or a 10. And of course, then if I'm more self-reflective in terms of my own direction, then that obviously reduces.
Yeah. And what about the final one? Am I externally open?
Yeah, I've got a 9 for that. I think, kind of, obviously won't go into details, but obviously growing up in a family situation where I often felt kind of walking on eggshells a little bit in terms of how my parents responded to certain things. I think I developed a natural ability to be quite intuitive, to certainly in terms of interactions with people and non-verbal communication and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's actually become quite a positive skill that's been useful in coaching.
So when I reflect on all of your things, the one that feels like an area of focus is becoming result centered. And I guess if this was a longer coaching call, I might ask you, well, if you were more result centered, what would become possible for you?
Quite a lot, I think, is the answer to that.
Yeah. So it's something to play with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And I appreciate we're going through this quite quickly, just in the interest of time, because I do need to finish at 5 to the hour, because I need to release the call for those of you who are in the Be the Coach program. Natasha is taking over the call today, so I need to log out and then let the Be the Coach group log in again to the same system. So I appreciate we're going through these at a fairly high level, but it's really just to give you a sense of an idea of, first of all, there's a calibration here, which is really about where you are today, and also the same questions can be a powerful coaching tool and give you an area to focus on, or a couple of areas to focus on. So I'm going to speak to Liana in Stockholm. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm extremely well, thank you. So let's dive in. Where are you on Am I results centered?
Unfortunately, I think I am a 3 or 4, maybe. That's my.
Okay.
And I heard the other talking, and I have been. That's my main problem area actually right now. This
Okay.
not knowing what result I want, and then it's not very easy to be result centered either. So.
Okay.
So that's a problem area, I think.
Yeah. And I think let's not unpick this here, but just as a clue, if we're helping people become leaders or we're thinking about leadership for ourselves, if we're not sure what results we want to create, then others are they going to feel that we're able to lead them, or are they going to say, well, if they're not sure, then I'm not going to be sure? And this is just to pick up the idea, Leona, not rather than your situation. But
yes, of course, you're right. Yeah.
And what about being internally directed?
I have scored myself an 8 because I think I am internally directed, and that doesn't mean that I don't listen to others. But when I do decisions and when I make up my mind for things, it's me that I'm listening to.
Yeah. Actually, you reminded me of something. For those of you who may be familiar with Gandhi's story, Gandhi is obviously seen as being a great spiritual leader, and yet he was someone who had some very strong views. So being a great leader and a service-oriented leader is not the same as not having strong views. So he was very strongly internally directed. Yeah. He was entirely consistent with his idea of non-violent protest. He had some very specific views about the role of the British, about the role of the Muslims, and they weren't necessarily popular at the time. I mean, history has treated him kindly, but at the time he was hugely challenged on some of those things, and yet he was very consistent with those thoughts. So I appreciate what you say there. That I think being internally directed is a very strong leadership quality. So, am I other focused?
Yes, I am. 7, 8, something right like that. But as the other person said, when I'm in a coaching situation, I'm 10, because then myself doesn't matter that much. I'm a 2. So that depends, but I'm quite other focused and want to know where people are and what they want and how we can create things together.
Yeah. Thank you. And so the final one, am I externally open?
Yes, I am. 8, I think. Something like that. Yeah. And I think that's,
so again, in a very rapid fire summary, what I'm hearing is that once you understand what results you want to create,
yes,
then a lot more could be possible for you.
Yes, a lot more. I think that has really been interesting to me to listen to this call today and to have these questions, because that's what's lacking for me. That's to be result centered and really focus on what results do I want, instead of just hoping for them to appear or something. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do after this meeting. What results do I want?
Fantastic. Well, I'd love to hear from you. So
that's the same.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to do one more. I'm just jumped around a little bit. I'm going to do Emma. Hi, Emma.
Hello. Hello, David. All right?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good today, actually. Thank you.
Fantastic. So let's quickly run through yours. Am I results centered?
I'm a 6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've got some work to do on it, and I quite easily slip back into my comfort zone to suit myself.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I know
what's the key? What's the key to slipping back into comfort zone?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I probably do know. When it all gets a bit stressful, maybe.
Mm.
Or I doubt myself.
Yeah, I was interested. That's interesting you to make that distinction, because what I'm wondering is, as a leader, if you had a powerful result that you were focused on, then would that doubt show up?
Not so much.
Possibly.
Possibly, but yeah, not so much, I don't think.
Yeah. So am I internally directed?
7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always been internally directed, I think. I don't, well, I listen to other people, but then I make my own decisions.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're externally open. So you take input and then decide. Use your own compass.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do.
Perfect. So what is your answer to number? Am I externally open? What's your number for that?
9.
Yeah. And am I other focused?
7. I always have been, I think.
And what would take that from being a 7 to a 9 or a 10?
I think if I could pursue my interests more, it would be higher. But I think having 2 young children, although I'm other focused with them, I'm not other focused with everyone else then.
Okay, I understand. So I was wondering what the blocker was, but that makes sense. Makes complete sense. So is it about separating time, that there's children time and there's serving others time? In that serving others time, what would your score be?
10.
So again, taking these questions and the calibration, it feels like the one area where I think you could usefully apply some energy would be around, am I result centered?
Yes.
And I'm wondering, if you did that, what would be possible for you?
Possibly the universe.
I like you to think big. Beautiful.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for that, Emma.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for that. So I'm going to say thank you to everybody. I've enjoyed being on this call. I hope you appreciate the 4 questions. And as I say, use them as calibration, use them as coaching, use them with your clients. I think they're an immensely powerful tool for understanding where we are as a leader. And there's a question coming up from Anne. Let me sit with us a second. Between results-centered and other-focused. My answer would be, is that true? Maybe, I don't know, so Anne. Let's come back to that one day. So I really appreciate you joining the call. I hope you found it valuable. I look forward to connecting again soon. I haven't set up another wisdom call yet, but I'm certainly going to. If you've enjoyed this or the other calls and have a specific topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like me to do, then send me a message, post something in Coaching Unlimited. I have some other themes anyway, but I'd love to hear from you in terms of what you would love to work on, what you'd love to have as a conversation. Great to connect with you. Create an amazing day. And I love you all. And speak to you soon.